Picture two people living in the same era, facing the same economy, working just as hard as each other. The first one wakes up every morning, grabs their gear, and heads out to hunt. They come back with something. Life is fine. Consistent, reliable, manageable. Until the forest burns down. The second one chose a harder path early on. They cleared land, planted seeds, tended soil through seasons where nothing came back. Watched the trees grow slowly, sometimes painfully slowly. But eventually those trees started producing fruit every day. Whether they showed up or not, that is the whole framework. Hunter versus farmer. And before you say, obviously I want to be the farmer, most people who think they already made the switch have not. They just moved to a different part of the forest. Today we are going to map out exactly which group you are in, why the system makes it almost impossible to move up, and what the actual path from hunter to farmer looks like in practice. Not in theory, in practice. There are three groups here, not two. And the middle group is where most of the confusion and most of the pain lives. Group 1 is the hunter. In 2026, that means anyone whose income stops the moment they stop working. W-2 employee, hourly worker, salaried, professional gig worker. Your knowledge and your time are the bow. The paycheck is the animal you caught. Stop hunting, stop eating. The majority of working Americans are in this group. There is nothing shameful about it. It is the most straightforward way to earn money that exists. The problem is not being here. The problem is staying here forever without planting anything on the side. And the risk is bigger than most people want to admit. The pandemic was a forest fire. Millions of people lost their jobs in a matter of weeks, not because they were bad at what they did, not because they made poor choices, but because the forest caught fire and they had never planted a single seed. No savings runway, no alternative income, just free fall. Group 2 is what I call the short cycle farmer. These are the people who felt the trap and made a move. Went freelance, started a consulting practice, opened a small business, became their own boss. From the outside, this looks like an upgrade, and it feels like one for about 3 weeks. Here is what nobody mentions. The freelancer who does not work, does not get paid. The consultant who takes a month off, loses clients. The small business owner who steps away for 2 weeks comes back to a pile of problems that only they can fix. They traded one boss for a worse one. The new boss does not take vacations, does not offer benefits, and has zero sympathy when you are exhausted. The business owns them. They do not own the business. I know someone who quit their corporate job to be their own boss. 3 years later, they had not taken a real vacation. Their entire livelihood depended on 2 clients who could leave at any time. They were working more hours than before, making about the same money and calling it freedom because no one told them when to log in. That is not a farmer. That is a hunter with a business license. The distinction that actually matters is simple. Does the income require your presence? If yes, you are still hunting. It does not matter what your LinkedIn title says. Group 3 is the long cycle farmer. This is the person whose money keeps moving while they are asleep, while they are dealing with a family emergency, while they are doing absolutely nothing productive. Dividend income arriving on a Tuesday for no reason other than they own shares of something that pays dividends. Rental income on the first of the month regardless of what they did that week. Index fund growth compounding quietly in the background year after year untouched. Assets that work the overnight shift so they do not have to. That is the actual definition of financial freedom. Not a number, not a salary. Income that does not require your presence to exist. Group 3 sounds obvious when you lay it out like this. So why does almost everyone stay stuck in Group 1? 2 reasons. One from the outside, one from the inside. The outside reason is that the system was built to produce hunters, not farmers. Hunters. Think about what 12 years of formal education actually prepared you for. You learned to follow a schedule someone else created. You learned to perform tasks on demand and be evaluated on your output. You learned how to interview, how to write a resume, how to show up on time, how to accept compensation that someone else decided was appropriate. And you learned absolutely nothing about how money compounds, what an index fund is, why someone who starts investing $250 a month at 22 ends up in an almost unrecognizable financial position compared to someone who starts the exact same habit at 32. The gap between those two people, by the way, is roughly $380,000 by retirement age. Same monthly amount. 1 decade of difference. That calculation is not in the curriculum. It never has been. A workforce that genuinely understood compounding and passive income would not be financing everyday purchases on revolving debt, which is exactly what leads to reason 2, the earn-spend-debt loop. You get paid, you spend it. If you run short, you borrow. The next paycheck comes. You pay the minimum on what you borrowed, you spend the rest. The cycle resets. This is not an accident. Minimum payment structures on credit cards are deliberately calculated to keep balances alive for years. Car dealerships advertise monthly payments instead of total prices because the monthly number feels survivable even when the total number is not. Buy now, pay later makes the true cost of a purchase invisible at the exact moment your brain is most willing to spend. These are features of the system, not flaws. The goal is to keep your monthly obligations growing slightly faster than your income so the gap between what you earn and what you actually have never quite closes. And if the gap never closes, you never accumulate enough to plant seeds, which means you keep hunting forever. Meet Marcus, 33 years old, project manager in Charlotte, making $88,000 a year. Solid income for a mid-cost city. 2 car payments, a mortgage that took everything he had to qualify for, and roughly $300 in a savings account he has not thought about in months. Marcus is not irresponsible. Marcus is not bad with money. Marcus is just a hunter who got caught in the loop before he understood the loop existed. The thing you are actually losing inside this cycle is not dollars. It is the option to stop. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year, mandatory. Not because you want to, but because stopping means the whole thing falls apart. That loss of optionality compounds just as surely as interest does, except it compounds in the wrong direction. The longer you stay in the loop, the harder the exit gets. So what do most people do when they feel the loop tightening? They quit. Quit the job, go freelance, start something on the side, become their own boss. It feels like the logical move. You identified the problem, trading time for money, and you decided to stop doing it for someone else and start doing it for yourself. Here is the thing the personal finance influencers will not tell you because it does not make for an inspiring video. 99% of people who make that move end up less free than before. Not more. They work longer hours, they earn roughly the same, sometimes less, and they spend every waking moment aware that if they stop, everything stops with them. I am not saying do not ever go out on your own. I am saying do not do it for the wrong reason. There is exactly one good reason to start a business. You identified a problem that genuinely bothers you, you believe you can solve it, and you would work on it even if it paid nothing for the first year. That is the threshold. Not, I want to be my own boss. Not, I want to make more money. Not, I am tired of my commute. If you are starting a business to get rich, there are easier paths to the same destination. We will come back to those in a minute. The startup conversation is its own rabbit hole, and we are going to set it aside. Because the actual path from Group 1 to Group 3 does not require you to quit your job, take on risk you cannot afford, or bet your financial stability on whether your idea works. It starts exactly where you already are. Step 1. Stay in Group 1 and get dramatically better at the hunt. This sounds like the opposite of what you want to hear. But here is the math. The only raw material you have to work with in the early stages is the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is your seed money. The bigger it is, the faster you can plant. And the fastest legal way to widen that gap in the United States right now is not cutting expenses further, it is increasing income. Negotiate your salary. The data on this is not subtle. People who negotiate a hiring earn an average of $5,000 more per year, starting from day one. Over a 10-year period, accounting for raises calculated on that higher base, that single conversation compounds into a gap that passive income strategies cannot close for years. Switch companies when the market offers it. The average raise from a job change in the current US labor market is somewhere between 10 and 20%. The average annual raise at the same company is 3%. Those two numbers are not in the same conversation. Build skills that the market will pay more for. You are living in an era where you can learn almost anything with a laptop and enough discipline. That is not a motivational statement. That is a leverage point. More skill, more income, more seed money. The goal of step 1 is simple. Maximize the surplus. Then immediately move to step 2. Step 2, convert every dollar of surplus into seeds the moment it exists. Passive income, and this is worth defining clearly, does not mean no work up front. It means the ratio of work to return flips over time. You do the work once, or you deploy the capital once, and then the asset keeps producing without your continuous presence. That is the flip. That is what you are building toward. In practical terms, for someone starting in 2026, the most accessible entry points look like this. Index funds and ETFs. You buy a small piece of a large number of companies. Those companies pay dividends. The funds grow over time, and your only job is to not touch it. Dividend-paying stocks, similar logic, slightly more active in the selection phase. Rental property, if you have the capital for a down payment, a tenant's monthly payment becomes income that arrives whether or not you did anything that week. None of these are get-rich-fast vehicles. All of them work through the same mechanism: time plus consistency plus leaving the thing alone. Meet Jessica, 28 years old, middle school teacher in Nashville, $57,000 a year. Not a high income by any conventional measure. She started putting $200 a month into a broad index fund at 23. Not $200 when she felt like it. $200 automatically every month before she could decide to spend it on something else. By 45, that portfolio generates roughly $1,200 a month in dividends and growth distributions. She did not get a second job. She did not start a business. She just stopped eating every animal she caught and started planting some of them instead. Step 3. Diversify the orchard. One income stream is a tree. A portfolio of income streams is an orchard. The pandemic made this distinction brutally clear. Short-term rental income collapsed almost overnight in early 2020. Landlords whose only passive income was Airbnb got hit just as hard as salaried employees whose companies froze hiring. But the people who had rental income, plus dividend income, plus a bond allocation, plus a side position in REITs, they lost some fruit. They did not lose the orchard. The goal is not one perfect passive income stream. The goal is 4 or 5 imperfect ones that do not all fail at the same time. Now picture that. Dividends from an index fund. Income from a rental property. A small royalty from something you built once. A REIT distribution arriving quarterly. None of them life-changing on their own. All of them together over enough time adding up to something that covers your actual cost of living. That is the moment you stop being a hunter. Not when you quit your job, not when you launch a business, when the income that requires your presence becomes optional rather than mandatory. When you could stop hunting and the orchard would keep you fed. That is what this whole framework is pointing toward. Most people will hear this and agree with everything and change nothing. Because the early years of being a farmer are genuinely harder than the early years of staying a hunter. Your friends are spending their raises. You are investing yours. They are upgrading their apartments. You are leaving your contributions untouched. That asymmetry is uncomfortable in the short term and transformative in the long term. A few years of living below what you could spend, so you eventually live beyond what you could earn. The forest will burn again. It always does. The only question worth asking right now is whether you have planted anything yet.